Good afternoon, colleagues. Please take your seats, and we begin our section devoted to protection against data leaks. Let me introduce the panelists. They are Klevtsov Alexander, Head of Business Development ELP System, Vasily Popkov, IT Security Director, RTN Forum, Oleg Grafeev, Head of Data Security in UPNC Zarya, Roscosmos, Dmitry Kuznetsov, Positive Technologies, and Artyom Sichov, Head of SOC eBay Reform. Colleagues, let's begin with the beginning. So imagine that you are an employee of the Conti hacker group, not an employee, but part of the group, and you leaked your ransomware. Can you go to the Russian court of law to protect your right? But do we need that? I would pretend that everything's all right and carry out a PR program that we are open, transparent, but I'll never go to the Russian court of law. Of course, I have that right. Yes, but if I am a hacker, a real hacker, I don't need it at all. But if you are a clandestine member of the hacker, well, whether I need it or not, I don't see any sense. I don't see any point to be protected by law. So everything that died is not useful. I will not punish anyone for that leak. The data has leaked, and it is no longer valuable for me. Thank you, Oleg. The question is to you. Is there any sense to go to the Russian court if data is leaked? What are the prospects in that kind in Russian reality? Or if data has leaked, it's leaked. In our industry, the practice of going to court is not known. We believe that such procedure requires a lot of resources, takes a lot of time, and actually doesn't bring any positive results. So what can we do in that case to minimize risk, to compensate losses, to punish the cyber criminal, but in what can we really reach? Of course, we can lose part of reputation, but the whole country will know that we have been broken, compromised, our data leaked. It's better not to tell anyone, eliminate the consequences, find out why it happened, and close the gap. Vasily, what about you? What's your opinion? What about going to court? Please switch on your microphone. Oh, yes, I would support the colleagues who didn't have such experience, but in general, the incidents happened. We solved those problems by the top management of the company. It's a good subject to discuss in different quarters. Artyom? I fully agree with Dmitry that I wouldn't go to any kind of courts. It's a good PR campaign. If I am a county manager, I would generate a new version and say that all this is unconfirmed, and this is one more PR action as a result. It's useless to go to court. And then everyone will know who is behind Conti. Why do I need that? Alexander, what about DLP vendor? Is it useful to go to court, or is it better to conceal the fact of data leak? Briefly, we have to go to court. But what about the precedents? Our experience shows, I know personally at least one customer who has a procedure of going to court. All the people have signed appropriate documents for that, and I have another company who deals with hardware leasing. They had several precedents when they brought some of their employees to court for data leaks. But everything is within the Russian legislation. All such incidents they tried to solve through the court of law. There was another incident when internal investigation found a well-organized group, evaluated the damage, then went to that group, saw them, the materials, and said, we are going to court. And they compensated the damage without going to court. So the court can serve as a threat to potential cyber criminals. So you are the only person who said that you do that. What is the practice? What has the company to do to make such going to court valuable and useful? First of all, you must impose a mode of commercial secret. It should be well described what kind of data is confidential, what kind of data is critical. You have to train your employees so that in their labor contracts he had to sign that all the information generated in the office belongs to the company, and so on and so forth. If such security foundation is ready, then the court of law can regard the situation. There were other precedents when DLP was installed clandestinely, without any signatures, without any documents, without any paper security practices. Then the top manager wanted to bring his employee to court, but the court said no. What are the grounds for the case? There is no case. No one signed anything, no one made any commitments, so what? So in order to monitor the situation, you must have legal grounds. So what about methodological case? Alexander said you must prepare the paper documents to bring them to court. Do you see an employee who is blamed for data leaks? Can you say that there is a constitution, Article 23, secret of postal exchanges, you cannot read my mails? So if I have in such situation, if I am blamed for data leak, I would use a different strategy. The biggest problem is to say that this paper, this report, it's not secret. Is it commercial secret or is it not? It's very difficult to convince that, and many people said that this document is officially without a secret or confidential stamp, but the data within that document, is it secret or is it not? It's so what kind of pressure you can apply on your employee? Of course, and I will evaluate if I am that employee. I must evaluate the pressure, the possible consequences, and sometimes come to terms with the management. Or I may say that, no, you are wrong, you are absolutely wrong, this is non-confidential, you have no right to read my mails, and so on. But never rely on constitution. It makes no sense. So, do you think those positions are correct or not correct for you personally? What do you do when you try to protect against data leaks? colleagues, first of all, my advice is be friendly to your lawyers, because my experience shows that we have situations when there were a lot of documents published in the company about data security. With good lawyers, we come to the same conclusion: what we can do and what can really be protected. An example, in one legal department, they looked at the normative base, at the regulatory base, and say, no, we can look from 2 points of view, from the point of view of an employer and an employee, and we have to balance the interests of the employer and of the employee, so that the employee rights and the employer rights could be balanced to the benefit of both. Then we see continuous changes, and we must monitor those changes. Well-defined data security policy or commercial secret policy should be reviewed on a regular basis, because in some cases people violate some rules, but we realize that the environment has changed, and actually we cannot punish that employee because the situation is different, the requirements are already different, they changed since the moment the document was published. So we have to continuously monitor the situation and the changes. So that's it. These are the points I wanted to make in general. Thank you. Oleg, what about you? In our company, the approach is as follows. We stem from the fact that we have to build paper security, first of all, to have a foundation basis for further actions, including bringing an employee to court. And in principle, it often happens that availability of such documents and the fact of the employee knowing about that document is a good factor which prevents data leaks. In one of the previous companies that I worked, there was a case when an employee of a government agency took information out of the company. We didn't go to court. The person was immediately fired, and that person couldn't protest because that was the least punishment he could take. So the situation is continuously changing. How easy it is to continuously support the list of information assets and their location, to keep it up to date, because of Jive and clouds and virtual things and containers are continuously moving, and the security people do not always know why they were relocated, and if they don't know where they are, how can we blame the employees? It's very difficult. How in the agile world to keep the list of information assets up to date? So that is difficult. I am not a specialist in paper documents. I'm about digital documents. If we look at clouds, containers, which we cannot trace, we have solutions for other protection tools who are not linked to DLP. We have pump systems, we have protection DevSecOps, that we control. A new container appeared and we monitor it. And I believe talking about the future of DLP. DLP is not needed in many cases. What is a leak? A new container. We have a lot of solution. The self-learning system can generate such a procedure: a new container, a new port, network traffic through that port. You can believe that this is sort of an anomaly, and all our solutions should find anomalies. The first anomaly analysis systems were not quite popular, but I expect a new wave of such technologies, because to track everything in a heterogeneous environment is very difficult. We have good examples of forensic incidents. It's very important to see data leak forensics, to see that we have a data leak in that container for this username. So to see the entire chain of events until the destination point. We believe that in future such cases would be quite interesting. Tima, to continue about methodology, how can we keep the data up to date in a continuously changing environment? Is it possible at all for modern data security people, or shall we skip it and ignore it for the time being? Honestly, I would forget about commercial secrets and look at what is really happening. If you see that something is leaking outside, so you shouldn't think about whether it's commercial secret or not commercial secret, because a leak is a leak. A person is taking something out of your company, or your perimeter is broken and data was stolen. These are two different things. The internal leaks are dangerous, but they are dealt with in one way. Hackers are dealt with in another way. Our main losses are losses from negative PR after the data loss, and we all know that yes, people take some data out of the company. There is nothing bad in that, but when we are broken and they did with us whatever they want, then that is quite negative, and that wave is long-term. Sometime it may last for years, and then we are fighting against breakthroughs, against breaking through our perimeter, and then only think about what exactly has been stolen. It's interesting. There are 2 points of view. Paper security, which cannot help us in a continuously changing world. If we look at recent published data leaks, they are due to badly configured Mongo or breakthrough from internal employee who has access rights. It's very difficult to talk in terms of classical DLP. So a person who has access rights got access to data and took data from your company, stole it for some time. Or cloud. The leak channels are quite different in the clouds, different from the classical channels like USB keys, emails. Paper security, of course, cannot provide you 100% security. It will help you to solve controversial problems in the court of law. When you are broken, of course, you must protect against external attacks, but it doesn't compromise your paper documents. You always have employees who have access to critical data. You have to prevent breakthroughs, and also you can mitigate risks of unauthorized access, maybe authorized access to critical data. Before we dealt with emails or USB cards, modern DLP must be integrated with the clouds, with the systems that controls personal devices of your employees. I say personal devices, and also take into account remote access. Vague perimeter, pandemics, remote access, home employees, remote employees, vague perimeter. You are talking about the agents. No, clouds, remote, but the channels are the same. Mail, USB key. No, let me give you an example, a technical one. We have customers who work with Microsoft Exchange Online, Cloud Mail, and they are allowed to use smartphones. All mail traffic goes beyond the perimeter, and you have to take into account not only the mail traffic, but what? Personal messengers? No. You have to control not the attempt of taking data out of the company, but how the person works with enterprise data, how he is addressing the data. You have to integrate Office 365 and the cloud to see what is published, what is downloaded. So we have to act not at the moment when data already left your company, but to integrate with the business system and see how the employee is actually working. So again, that is employee control, channel control, and employee control as well. For example, open Mongo, looking at the internet, there is no employee, no channel. It's a problem of infrastructure. If one element of infrastructure is directly connected to open internet, what are we discussing then? Vasily, what about you? Two positions, 2 points. Alexander said that DLP should remain here, it should be advanced. Dmitry said you have to monitor everything and then to see whether the data is confidential or non-confidential. So from the point of view of a customer and user and services, what is your position? It's a philosophical question, actually, but it's very specific and concrete. Well, DLP, from the point of view of a user, it's a good tool, one of the tools, and we all realize that security is a set of protective measures, protection of channels, protection against external devices, and we can talk a lot about it. Well, I believe that the combined solution, complex solution, it's not about DLP becoming advanced, but it's about using advanced solutions, all kind of solutions, integrated solutions. Some time ago, when we started deploying DLP and CM, what was it? We just install something, run something, it works, it runs, some data comes to us. A month ago, we realized, oh, we have DLP, let us see how it works. And, well, we monitor, what do we monitor? It's good that when we have 24/7 services, monitoring, SLA, incidents, we see gaps, consequences, and here, well, once again, it's a philosophical question, and each person tries to solve it in his own way. Some people outsource it and forget about it. It's the simplest way. But the question is, who will be held responsible? Because monitoring is just monitoring. You cannot place responsibility on someone. It's just a tool. If at the enterprise you can install your own internal monitoring center, well, it's just a tool. And your employees are tools. They do their jobs, including the functions of data security. So it's difficult. It's hard for me personally to answer your question from the viewpoint of a user. But a few words about paper security. It's my personal experience. I have many cases when, yes, we prevented incidents, we carried out investigations, but even after that, where is the legal grounds? Where are the legal grounds? You told us that the enterprise has assets, and many people will agree that few people do inventory every day, because infrastructure is huge, and we don't exactly know what appeared, what disappeared. An incident happens in our infrastructure, and we look, well, what kind of infrastructure element was it? It wasn't even inventorized. And what do we have to do if this element was installed but never registered? So the fact of violation is here, but from the legal point of view, we cannot do anything because legally the element doesn't exist. So I do not divide paper and digital documentation. It should all be combined. We install hardware, we paid the money, but where is the result of our work? Thank you.
Thank you. Oleg, from your experience, DLP, does it make sense to use DLP if we don't, if you're not able to run full inventory of the assets when they're being updated all the time? And it might be easier, as Dmitry said, to investigate any incident that arrives, and whether the confidential information was there or was not, it's not important. And who will have to do that? The security service, or it can be outsourced so that some external SOC do the monitoring, and if needed, tell the customer, hey guys, you have leakages, take measures, organizational ones. Go to the relevant organizations and let them come and punish. From our experience of running DLP and resource inventory, we see them as absolutely unrelated things. DLP monitors probable leakage channels, and when certain triggers of sensitive information are found, an investigation is run. Here, in this case, the key thing is not the source of leakage, but the category of information and content. As to who runs this monitoring and investigation, we have in-house SOC that we built based on Zarya for the needs of Roscosmos. I used to be its head until recently. So we have SOC professionals running DLP, and investigation is done by professionals working in the Roscosmos head office. So this combination has been functioning quite well with good results. So doing post-mortem on some situations related to some possible, not even leakages, but in compliance with the procedures they're being run. Okay, thank you. Artyom, a question about the integration of DLP into SOC, because Oleg said that DLP is monitored by SOC, but they said it's quite often that DLP is not included in the SOC, or there are several separate people in SOC who do not add information to CM or DLP, but they just sit at the monitors and watch what's happening. Just because the DLP things don't always match what the CM and SOC deal with. So from your experience, what is the right way to connect DLP to SOC, and does it make sense? Whether it makes sense or it doesn't, I think it depends on the organization. In some organizations, you need to report about DLP incidents. So how much is being spent? I mean, man-hours, how many people are required to plan the budget? But it's not about security when we're reporting by the number of incidents. Well, it's not exactly about the security. But like, I would initiate cases in ERP. So in ERP, I think DLP is not needed within the SOC. We just add events in ERP. So that any security officer would come to the information security officer, and they'll show it the interface, and that will be the same source of information. So I think you shouldn't load this data from DLP. You have to enter all data in ERP, and it's no problem interfacing these solutions. So I would initiate those in ERP. Talk about the technology monitoring. Something that's missing is a technology report about leak investigations. So, for instance, look, an accountant is sitting, and then requests are coming for a resource that is not quite usual. And then, doing post-mortem, you see that there was a data leak. I think we know that security protection tools or data security tools lag behind the DLP tools. If we, so I think if we consider, if you want to have a file blocked, I think it can be done in EDR. They were talking about Office 365. We can build logs in CM and do hunting in the same thing. That will be a solution within SOC, and we'll put a tick on the box. It's DLP. So basically, this is, as my colleague said, it's a philosophical question. But technology-wise, I think in the future it's going to be integrated into a single solution. So roughly speaking, the classic DLP that we're talking about, you're saying, are going to die out, and they'll be replaced by the respective functionality in CM, EDR, and others. Well, technology-wise, yes. But in Russia, there are a lot of customers that are only exposed to the world over email. And in real life, they exchange data with flash drives. For such organization, DLP is useful to monitor the leakage over email, and they do it quite well, and also keep an eye on removable media. Yes. So that's about obsolete systems. Dmitry, yeah, look, let me just give you an example. I'll use this example to support what I stated previously. So you don't have a SOC. We don't have a SOC. We do have. We have Alexei Novikov. Alexei Novikov and his guys have found out that there's some stream and files are being sent over the slide. Our traffic analyzers takes these files out. So what do we do with this file? So it's a document. We go through the scanner. If there are any viruses there, we run it in the sandbox, and nothing stands in the way for us to feed it into DLP and to see what it is going to say. We don't have a problem with integration. The question is whether we need that or not. And then it's a question about the classification of resources, where this file is being sent from. Is it of interest to us to feed it into DLP? So I don't see a problem integrating. How it's done, it's also quite clear. So I wouldn't counterpose these, the event control and CM and DLP. These are all parts of the same multi-function solutions. Okay, Dmitry, when I said we've run into a sandbox, and we ran it through an AV machine, it's indeed clear. But then you get a question to identify whether the information is confidential or not. Quite often, you don't have this binary answer, yes or no. Or is it, or like in the sandbox, through a scale of 100, like more than 97, it's malicious, and let's do manual analysis. Another point that I touched upon at the very beginning, the main problem is it's not really about DLP. The main problem to provide commercial secrets. How many times I've seen that? How many NDAs I have approved? They're trying to cover everything. All knowledge about the infrastructure is a commercial secret. Hey, guys, think again. Is it really what you cover with your commercial secret status is of value for you? What do you think? The knowledge of your infrastructure, does it deserve protection? You're doing it just like 99% of other companies in the market do. And not even seeing this information, I will perfectly understand how things are segmented. But there is a very little small scope of really important resources and information. And you should focus on this. So in our case, feeding a file into DLP that we've taken out of some stream, it's only going to happen if it comes from some sensitive resource, let's say from a building system, from some other system. Yes, we'll take a look at that, but that will be a very narrow class of information, and we'll only be doing that if we perfectly understand that the leakage of this particular resource is tantamount to death for us. Alexander, you didn't agree with the position that DLP is going to die out. I do not agree with a lot of things that have been said here. Look, let's discuss. Back to a couple of points the previous speaker said. What I didn't like, what I was concerned with. The inventory of information assets and DLP are two different things. No, this should be the same process. And keeping the policies updated, keeping everything in the consistent state. Classic DLP has been mentioned as a swear word, just like paper security. But yes, just like paper security. Look, DLP should be modern, not only from the point of view of channels, of integration with cloud solutions, but also in terms of the analysis technology, how it identified these incidents in the data stream. There are, well, I've heard that some other tools can analyze flash drives. I'll give you a simple case. We have a customer, a large bank, that controls the movement of information between the compartments, some super confidential, less confidential. And so a task was formulated. We want to control and block operations in the clipboard between these two areas. We want to block it based on the result of the analysis, so that full linguistics could be analyzed. So, for instance, when they are moving information that's allowed to be moved within these areas, then it should be allowed, and if not, then not. So how can you do it without DLP? If you have thousands of events per day, and or, for instance, we have a customer, another financial organization. Their DLP system records 1.5 million events. every day. And this customer is using our AI technologies to identify incidents, detect incidents. How can a channel control cope with this huge mass of data by just collecting data and making some statements? You need fully fledged analysis, also using AI, also being able to do automation. And if we say yes, the idea that was born 10 years ago, we have flash drive here, we have email here, we have some regulations. Then, of course, DLP would be hard to use. There'll be a lot of false positives and negatives. So, if we are thinking just like people thought 10 years ago, then yes, of course, a DLP is a box that you put somewhere that has taken a look at some flash drives, and that's it. But if we're talking about a DLP system that can, firstly, DLP has to protect data from well, in the minimum of time. It should also help run the inventory of informational assets. Also, it should be able to make some decisions without human intervention based on AI. So this is the DLP that you can use in the modern world, where you have 1 million events per day. But if we are to talk about like they did 10 years ago, then of course it's a useless instrument, useless tools. That's very briefly what I feel about that. I could keep discussing. Well, your position is clear. Thank you. Oleg, in continuation of both your points and your colleagues, I've seen the thought mentioned more than once that inventory is very important. There's valuable data, there's classified information, and who determines the value of the data? One thing is when I have a list of sensitive information that has been updated for years. On the other hand, how to match it to specific infrastructure. So in this Postgres table, the data is confidential, and in the other Postgres table, the data not being confidential. So this data is valuable for the company, this is not. Who makes a decision about the final list that is attached to a specific infrastructure? Which data is valuable for the company and which not? We don't do applying a list on the infrastructure to the fields of tables, on databases. Just like, because we're a government structure, government organization, we have a certain list that they feed to us from above. And we verify specific information for its compliance to this list. Either that is flowing out, either is being leaked, or for which the procedures of operation change. For instance, standard exchange of confidential interaction information between employees over email. Of course, there are certain criteria, and these criteria apply to the text. For us, it's not important where this information is held. Well, I'm sorry for interruption, but this is exactly the question that I want to ask. You have a list that comes to you from above. It doesn't say that a combination of these words with these weight factors is confidential, because it's yourselves who determine it. And or you can determine that a picture of the Angara launcher that was published in Vedomosti or another newspaper is open, is public, and some specific mentioning of Angara things, Angara-related information is state secret. Who determines this value? Well, this is determined through expert activity. It's for us, it's defined by our customer, Roscosmos Corporation. So it's not our process. We are receiving that as a ready-made result from them. So do they send you a list, or do they send you specific rules that you insert into your DLP system? For the DLP, we are given specific rules. Okay. Okay, Vasily. Who is responsible for value in your organization? Well, before answering this question, I had a discussion about data leaks. I have a question in response, a bit astray. Should we monitor the monitoring centers? That is, those people who monitor events, monitor information leaks and other things. Because, from my experience, I can say we started discussing the list of commercial secrets. There's a case like when the Center of Monitoring collects all the data, the DLP is doing shadow copies and everything is fine. But taken together, it always as a national secret. Yes, yes. And here we're getting in a situation where what? Who is going to be punished? Now answering your question regarding the list of rules that come to us from the top. In the first place, in my understanding, the organization must itself define which list of information it classifies as confidential. But what comes to us from the top, no question, it has to be complied with. But for instance, if it's a design documentation, if it's about some innovation projects for future development. So a good question. At which point this information stops being confidential? And so there's only expert method that we could use. And again, coming back, we need to continuously modify and update the rules of detection. Because indeed, it can also be passed to automation tools so that the system should itself detect. But the human factor, of course, should be the final point here. And then you can build correlation, see how it's going to evolve further on. Well, an example. Rostec. They use CAD to design some products. It can be Autodesk or Ascon, doesn't matter. And then, following some interaction, a certain file, a CAD file, is passed within the organization. How to determine if this information is confidential or not? It's a good question, and I'll give you a very simple answer to this. In one of the DLP systems, there's the function of taking a blueprint, a print from. So you need to take a print from the information and run analysis. So the designer who built this blueprint or draft, they can take a copy and say it's confidential. You feel a bit critical about that. Yeah, we write a lot of secret documents. You take a set of open information from the internet, from our researchers, run a certain analysis, and then this analysis included in the secret report. My biggest problem is to make it so that the primary publication could be publishable, because on the one hand, this text is published from open sources. On the other hand, this text is part of a secret report, and nobody other than myself or my employees won't be able to say which information this report is open and which one is secret when they're telling that someone needs to do that. And my question is, look, is it my function to highlight paragraphs? I was young and foolish and was taking part in the Learned Council. There was a PhD defense. So the system was to identify the physical location of a ship by pictures. So one could exactly identify where the ship is. And I said, do you have a database of samples of ocean water in different points of the Earth? Of course, the management immediately asked me not to embarrass people. But in practice, it can be a very difficult to differentiate between confidential information. So that's why I'm quite skeptical about using effective DLP, except for the cases where we know for sure that a certain class of documents is vital for us. So we'll do everything to highlight every paragraph, and we'll be tracking this information, such red paragraphs. Thank you. Alexander, what would you like to say? I'm really, I can't wait now that you've mentioned the rockets. So just calm down, calm down. Look, again, everything is in the details, technology details. Let me give you an example. I'll be talking about technology. For instance, we have a technology of vector prints. For instance, you have a blueprint of a tank or an array of secret parts. You put this draft into DLP. You mean what? Who? If it's about a tank, then from my experience, I used to work in the military industry, defense industry after university. It's about interaction between a security department and IT security department. So this is the synergy of these two organizations. So an IT guy is given a set of data. You know, there are IT people and IT people. Oh, yeah. So we were feeding this. We're feeding this tank draft into a DLP system. Look at this case. Quite often, defense factories are dual purpose. Yes, a tank can be used to sow the fields. Okay, of course, and it can be used to fight. So, and then imagine a bad guy has inserted some element of the tank design into a tractor. That's a barrel. Well, I wouldn't go as far as that. So they even have taken this out, removed the details, and sent. Our DLP system would disassemble every draft into graphic primitives, and it will identify it. It will detect it. It will detect the presence of confidential parts. The same can be done with a set of parts. For instance, we have some sets of parts that we haven't published anywhere. It's under development. Also, that applies to civilian products as well. For instance, we haven't given it to any subcontractors. So any draft that doesn't seem to be confidential, if it has this part from that other list, then it could be detected. There was a question about the database containing confidential information. Again, let me give you a specific case. We have a customer, a large retail organization, for which the main information assets is the information about their purchasing prices. So the most confidential information is the purchasing price for, let's say, sweets. The problem with this information is that you can't classify it. You won't be able to institute regulations for tens of thousands of items. So you need to have a special technology that would be integrated with the CRM or an ERP system, so that all information about suppliers should always be updated, and any message going outside the company should be scanned to find mention of this information. But again, you have to do it in a specific technology case. If the system is tasked to find fragments of confidential information in other documents, for instance, we have a case where the customer protects the secret maps very much. And again, our system can find. So again, back to my idea. Thinking the way people were doing 10 years ago, then, okay, a DLP system makes no use. And if we say that a DLP system is capable of processing huge sets of data, has machine computer vision on board and AI, then it's an absolutely different DLP system. So, colleagues, thank you. We have gradually come up to the end of our discussion. As usual, we're not going to arrive at the same conclusion, and I haven't had the time to ask all of my questions, but I'd like to ask one for every one of you. so that you could answer. Yesterday, a Ministry of Digital Development representative said that the legislation is going to be changed so that the organization can be fined by 1% of its revenue for the leakage of personal data. Let's start with Artyom. If this law is enacted, and we have no doubts that it will, how it will change the situation with data leaks? Are there going to be fewer, or is it just that the price will go up? Indeed, it's a very difficult question. Well, perhaps there would be a certain decline in the beginning, but on the whole, the trend would be upward because the volume of information is going to grow, the number of channels of links is going to grow, so the total stream is not going to go down. So you mean to say that this draft law is not going to reduce the number of leaks, and fines will not be a big incentive for companies to think about that? Well, if you take banks, they also have regulators that have fines. So I think a company that is really concerned about its data, for them, everything will remain the same. For other companies, maybe they will add some new technology to protect themselves from leaks, put something on the perimeter to see if any new databases have appeared or not. But on the whole, I think there won't be a big surge or drop in the number of leaks. The price, well, the darknet will probably adjust and will say that now the prices are higher. Dmitry? Well, just repeating the European experience, GDPR imposes a revenue fee of a fine of up to 4% of revenue. So who needs personal data? Well, the leakage of personal data does not inflict damages on the operator, but once it is fined relative to the revenue, then more of operators and carriers will start investing in the protection. So something will start working in the market. Somebody will earn in the market, but the problem is not going to be solved. Well, no, it's not the point. Quite often you come, well, while I was working in a bank, you need to get protected. What are we going to lose if we lose some data? So are we going to be stripped of our license? No. Are we going to be fined? Okay. Yes. What doesn't damage the bank does damage the society, and the society wants to get protected. So this is a case where the society creates a tool that makes a business use tools to protect the society. So there's nothing radical to be expected, but I think the movement is in the right direction. Oleg, will it be affected by the law if it's adopted? I suppose it's not going to affect us directly, but it can affect the industry organizations, because just like everywhere in the country, just like it is in the market, so to speak, there's a practice of assessing the importance of introducing some protection measures based on the need. So a fine of 50 to 60,000 rubles, of course, is not serious enough for companies, just like, let's say, a 1% of the revenue. Maybe it'll push some companies to improve their security organization. So I think I will agree. It's a certain step towards a more effective protection of personal data. It's not a panacea. It's not a silver bullet, but it's a step in the right direction. Thank you. Vasily. Let me paraphrase this.
I will change the question. Does it mean that big operators will set up the one-day firms to process data with a revenue of 10,000, and those tiny companies will be fined and will bear responsibility? Well, it's a good opportunity, a good tool that would make operators review their security in greater detail. The colleagues already said that one of the paradigms for CEOs, what is the fine? It's small, no problem. Perhaps now they are going to have a different opinion on that. In general, I cannot say whether they are going to set up fake one-day long firms. I don't know. Maybe, if so, let's wait and see. But personally, I think this is the right way, by the way. You should have a lever to make business improve its security. And for cybersec people, it's a good opportunity to say, well, we have to have higher wages. Alexander, will your market grow? Yes, by all means. That's all. Look, I want to add. Some people are skeptical about fines. Okay, data leaked, well, 50,000, I'll pay that fine, no problem. For some companies, it's like that. This is an example. There was a bank which leaked $1 million customer. That is critical for the bank. And some people fight against data leaks not because they are afraid of fines, but they will lose reputation and they will lose VIP customers. Also, paper security. The correct paper security is a reminder for the employee that he will bear responsibility and compensate losses incurred on the company if you compile the right paper documents. Okay, thank you. Colleagues, I would like to thank all the participants, all those who answered my question. I would like to thank you all who listened to our answers. We didn't find any specific solutions. We didn't have such task anyway. But we discussed a number of things, a number of life hacks were voiced, and you might use them. But to summarize, yes, protection against data leaks is a multifaceted task. It's a paper task, it's a technical task, and there is no silver bullet, there is no one product that would fit all, but business is going to optimize its activities since regulation is becoming more harsh. I think regulation will also fail to solve this problem altogether. But if you work in cybersecurity, in the next few years you will have even more work due to our regulatory activities who think about the market to a greater extent than they think about us as their citizens. So at this point, I would like to complete our section. See you at other sections. Thank you.